Hey everybody, welcome back to When Creatives Thrive, a BOPA podcast. I'm Stuart Rustin, the multimedia manager at BOPA, and this week we're joined by Lesley Malin, a founder of the Chesapeake Shakespeare Company and its producing executive director. Under her supervision, CSC has grown into one of the largest theaters in Maryland and the 15th largest Shakespeare theater in the U.S. Lesley discusses equity in the theater space, including CSC's Black Classical Acting Ensemble, as well as the joys of opening doors to city students for free access to Shakespeare. Lesley's also the architect behind the Baltimore August Wilson Celebration, which aims to unite Baltimore's diverse theater community through Wilson's 10-play American Century cycle. Each play in the cycle is set in a different decade of the 20th century. Together, Wilson's work offers a vivid narrative of the African-American experience, and for the first time ever, these plays will be produced in chronological order right here in Baltimore. Lesley's joined in conversation with BOPA's communication manager, Barbara Hauk. Barbara's a multi-hyphenate theater artist who's performed Shakespeare, among other things, in and around Baltimore for over 25 years. She was elected the first artistic director of the Fells Point Corner Theater, where she currently still serves on the board as a member at large.
Lesley, for those who don't know, who was August Wilson and why is he referred to as the American Shakespeare?
Oh, August Wilson is one of the greatest playwrights of the 20th century, and he is often considered the poet of the Black experience of the 20th century. And he wrote this extraordinary series of plays, 10 plays, each set in a different decade of the 20th century, reflecting the Black experience. And these plays are poetic and full of incredibly rich characters and full of poetry and pain and humor, and everyone really loves them who sees them. And some of them are truly great plays, and they won Pulitzer Prizes and things like that. And maybe some of them are number 9 and number 10, but all of them have so much interesting and rich material. And he's just a really, really important writer, probably the most important playwright of the 20th century in America.
That's incredible. And those plays collectively are referred to as the American Century cycle?
That is correct.
And they are the basis of the August Wilson Celebration, which is currently ongoing here in Baltimore. And tell us a little bit about that and what inspired the idea for it.
Everybody does August Wilson because he's incredibly popular and very accessible. But he's written these 10 plays, and people are very proud about having done all 10 plays. Center Stage, I think, is about to do their 10th, and everybody's very proud of having done that. But nobody has done the plays in chronological order. He did not write them with the first in 1900 and the second in 1910. He wrote them all over the place. So I came up with the idea to do them all in chronological order, which is really fun, and no one has done that before. And the other part of this that I thought was really important was to bring the Baltimore theater community together and ask different theaters to do each of the plays. And so that there would be the opportunity for, our large LORT theaters like Center Stage and Everyman, and our smaller community theaters like Spotlighters and Fells Point Corner Theater, all to be working together. We've got Morgan State University has a slot. So it's really the first time in my experience that the Baltimore theater community has come together to do one large ranging project. And I've just been thrilled with how happy it makes people. Like, this project just makes everybody happy. It makes the theaters happy. It makes the audiences happy. People are eating this up. And it's particularly thrilling that, it's thrilling in so many ways. It's thrilling to bring August Wilson to a new audience. It's thrilling to be able to give people the opportunity for them to see his entire oeuvre in only 3 or 4 years. And it's exciting to introduce people to theaters that they've never walked into before.
It's definitely given me the opportunity to see some of his plays that I've only ever read.
Me too.
That's been really exciting to get to see them live and on stage. And really powerful. Because reading it is one thing, but seeing a production with, the lights and the sets and the costumes and the incredible acting is just like it's a whole different thing than just, reading it in a class or in, a scene study. So that's really wonderful. And as you mentioned, this is a 3 or 4 year, festival to be able to produce all 10 of these plays in order. And so you mentioned some of the positives and the rewards of doing it, but what's been the biggest challenge of producing this multi-theater, multi-year festival?
Honestly, the biggest challenge was early on when, I had this idea and I talked to a few theaters and I thought, well, if I just get it started. And then somebody said, well, have you gotten the permission of the estate? Oh my gosh, I completely forgot. So I go on this journey to I wind up talking to August Wilson's widow, Constanza Romero, and she's lovely, and she's so protective of her husband's legacy, as of course she is. And we had a number of conversations, and she couldn't make up her mind because there had been sort of talk of doing something kind of similar in New York. But anyway, it took a really long time, and finally, the issue was that Arena Players was going ahead with their show, The Gem of the Ocean, and they were opening. And so, were we going to announce the celebration or not? And I said, and it was down to like 3 weeks before, and I said, you have to let me know in the next 2 days, otherwise I'm killing this whole project. And it was, of course, totally right for Arena Players, the oldest continually operating Black theater in America, to go first. And so it was really important. And she said, fine, go ahead. So we sort of had to scramble to make all of this happen in no time, create a website, press releases, inviting people to things, letting people know about it. It was a lot of work in a very short amount of time.
Definitely been there. That's sometimes a hallmark of producing theater. Things don't happen for a long time, and then all of a sudden a whole bunch happens at once.
Very much.
And last year, I believe CSC, Chesapeake Shakespeare, did Joe Turner's Come and Gone. Yes. And if I recall correctly, the performance that I saw, August Wilson's daughter was in attendance.
She sure was. She lives in the area, and she's been at she was also at Art Centric production of Ma Rainey as well. So I believe her intention is to come to everyone. But it was particularly moving because she said that this play, that Joe Turner's Come and Gone, was written for her. And so that was really special to have her there.
Yeah, that was really lovely and definitely added an extra special lens for me, the viewer, which I appreciated.
Absolutely.
Very much.
And it made it feel, I don't know, like, extra connections and sort of the march of history a little bit. Absolutely.
Absolutely. It's so great that the celebration is supported in that way by his family. Yeah.
It is. And I should also mention that the August Wilson Society has been amazingly helpful. And one of their officers, Khalid Long, is the dramaturg. And he's just this font of information and so generous and so enthusiastic. And I've just been I feel so amazingly lucky to have him as a partner.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I hope I have the opportunity to meet him sometime.
Well, just, he'll be at the shows. So.
Oh, yeah. Lovely. And speaking of the shows, this year, Piano Lesson is about to open the season at Everyman.
We are so excited.
So that takes place in the 1930s. And then later this season, Spotlighters Theater, one of the smaller theaters you mentioned, is doing Seven Guitars, which is in the 1940s. And then Chesapeake is back doing Fences.
We are. We're very excited about that.
And that will be performed by the Black Classical Acting Ensemble, correct?
There will probably be some members of the Black Classical Acting Ensemble, but it hasn't actually been cast yet.
Oh, okay, lovely. Well, tell us a little bit about that acting ensemble.
It's sort of both an opportunity for Black actors to get mentorship and additional training. So that's part of it. It's also an opportunity for this ensemble to perform readings, and it's a rich vein of actors for us to use in our own shows and in our own teaching artist opportunities as well.
My experience doing classical theater it has historically been a pretty white affair, which doesn't lend itself to opportunity for that kind of training or opportunity to be in these kinds of shows. So I think that's a helpful and necessary thing to kind of close that gap a little bit. So that's wonderful.
It is. And we always make the opportunity. We do Romeo and Juliet every spring for for students. We do about 9 weeks. We serve thousands and thousands and thousands of students. We fundraise so we can bring in students from Baltimore City Public Schools for free and pay for their buses. And we always make sure that either Romeo or Juliet is played by a Black actor. And I didn't understand until we started doing that how important that was to students to see that active representation on our stages. But now I do see it, and it's incredibly powerful.
Absolutely. I've had the opportunity to kind of sit in the back of one of those student performances, and I'm of the firm opinion that Shakespeare, shouldn't just be read, it needs to be heard. And the opportunity to see it performed on its feet, because there's so much physical information that is lost, even if you're just reading it out loud. And
the dirty jokes just go over your head unless you have some help.
And seeing the students, just engage with that piece in a way that, is so lively, and, they get it. It's really, really fun.
We always say it's the closest you'll ever get to an Elizabethan audience, because the kids talk back to, they're giving Juliet a don't take the poison to Romeo, and they have a lot of them have not read it, they don't know, which is fantastic. And so when Mercutio is killed, they cannot believe it, and they are so upset, and they let you know that they are so upset.
It is so fun to be in the house for those.
It really is.
I agree. That's so great. So jumping back to the American Century Cycle, those plays are set in Pittsburgh, but if you just read them, you wouldn't necessarily know that. It seems like they could be set here in Baltimore.
Absolutely. So I totally agree with you.
Why do you think that is? What are the parallels there?
Well, we are both working class cities, and we've both got kind of chips on our shoulder. And of course, hugely influenced by the Great Migration. Although I think Baltimore's Black community goes back, its roots are so deep. I think the Black community in Baltimore had the largest free Black community of any city in America in the late 1860s. Anyway, and then the late 1850s. Anyway, I am not the historian here, but I do see a lot of parallels between those two cities, and so I'm not pushing the Pittsburgh part.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I believe Fells Point Corner Theater, which is, full disclosure, a theater I am involved with, is planning to do Jitney next season, which I'm very excited about.
As a matter of fact, Fells Point Corner Theater was, I think, one of the first theaters that I had a conversation with, because I knew y'all would come through for me.
Absolutely. And actually, prior to the quarantine, that season that never happened, I had, at that time, as artistic director, programmed Jitney. So we were going to do it anyway.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
so
great.
It's really wonderful that it gets the opportunity to happen in this celebration. That show centers around a pedicab stand. I don't know about the history of that in Pittsburgh, but I do know that there is a very long history of pedicabs in Baltimore, and that industry still does exist in a way similar to the Abrabbers that exist here and pretty much nowhere else. And so I'm really grateful for the opportunity to get to do that. And I think that's another one of those parallels between Baltimore and Pittsburgh. So a little quote here from August Wilson. I think it was the ability of the theater to communicate ideas and extol virtues that drew me to it. And also, I was and remain fascinated by the idea of an audience as a community of people who gather willingly to bear witness. So what are you bearing witness to here in Baltimore as you welcome audiences, and especially the students, into your space, and also travel around the city to different neighborhoods to perform?
That's such a beautiful quote, and I believe it so deeply. I always say, our closest relationship these days seems to be with our phones, right? And we don't, and since the pandemic, we just don't want to leave our houses. So the people who are brave enough to, get up off their couch and sit down with their fellow human beings to experience something are so brave, and I think it's going to save the world. We have a responsibility to bring that community, those opportunities for community as often as we can. So, we do that with our main stage series, our education program for, these kids. Most of them, this is the first time they've ever seen a play in a real theater. We want them to feel like this theater is their space too, that they are really welcome here, so that when they grow up, they feel like they want to come back, and they do, which is incredibly heartwarming. And then, and now we have our Shakespeare Wagon with our Shakespeare Beyond program, which we're in the very last stages of this summer. But we're going to different parks in the region, obviously, especially focused on Baltimore City. But those are free performances, and so we know that for a lot of people, coming to downtown is a huge burden for them, and we want to activate people's communities and their neighborhoods. And so if they can all come together and do something fun and silly or perhaps meaningful and sad, we really want to have that opportunity as well. So our Shakespeare Wagon has been wonderful at bringing people together. And we've had a lot of support from the state of Maryland for that, and without them, it wouldn't have happened. So I'm always grateful to be in a state that supports the arts as much as Maryland does.
Absolutely. No, the Maryland State Arts Council is certainly a strong advocate for arts at all levels too, not just the big flashy spaces, but also the DIY spaces and the performer-driven spaces and things like that. So I'm also very grateful for the State Arts Council. Speaking of American theater just as an institution, there is a appropriate criticism that it is often too old and too white. And I know that may not ring as true here in Baltimore, because I do think we have a lot of spaces that are actively working toward equity. But that's certainly not true in all places. And speaking as a theater maker, producer, managing director, how is increasing equity and accessibility, both in show selection and casting, not just morally, but financially responsible and necessary?
Oh my! I mean, it certainly is. The trick I found is it's fantastic if we're programming, an August Wilson, but it's convincing folks to come back for the show that maybe isn't August Wilson, that is The Tempest. Will they come back? And how do we convince them that they're going to have a brilliant and meaningful experience, even if it isn't explicitly about the Black experience? And I think that is something that theaters all over continue to struggle with a little bit. And I don't know what the answer is. And maybe, maybe we should just let it be. I don't know. I mean, I think it's important for us to program the best plays, right? And I think that there are more and more best plays being written by playwrights of color. We've got Dominique Morisseau is all over the top 10, Katori Hall, Rajiv Joseph, extraordinary writers whose plays will last down the centuries, I believe. And so I think it's happening. Maybe it's not happening as fast as people would like, but it's definitely happening.
A little personal question. Do you, as a managing director, still enjoy performing?
Oh.
and kind of where do you fall in the theatrical process now as finding the place where you find the greatest joy?
Oh gosh. I guess I consider, I guess I still love to perform. I perform, I try to do at least one show a year because I find it's just such a different experience and it just feeds a different part of me. So I wouldn't say it's a greater joy, but I would say it's a very different joy. And so I do like to have that experience. I also, I really love to be in the dressing room with everybody else and, understand what's going on. And I like to be at the rehearsal process with a new director to us so I know, exactly what's happening. And if there are problems, I understand in a completely different way than if somebody's just reporting back to me or I'm sitting in the balcony watching a rehearsal. Those are very different things. But I do love to perform. And I had the opportunity to play Queen Elizabeth in Mary Stuart this past spring, and that was so fun and fulfilling. And people were very kind to let me just sort of lose myself in being the queen for a few weeks, and I had a good time doing that.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Yeah, it's definitely different sitting at the performer side of the table versus the admin side of the table.
Very different.
Completely different experience.
Right. But of course, as I always say, the admin side of the table is storytelling too. It's just in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of storytelling and speaking of these grand ideas to have this August Wilson celebration, to be bringing students into the theater and also to be taking the theater out to the communities, do you have any other grand ideas that, barring any issues with funding or support, that you would love to be able to execute?
Oh, gosh. I would love to have the another opportunity to come up with another kind of celebration to bring the theater community together again. And so who knows, maybe that's Shakespeare. Washington, D.C. did that about 20 years ago with all of the different arts organizations did sort of Shakespeare-related programming for 1 year, and it was really fun. And so it might be a way to bring us together, but maybe there's a different way to bring us together, and maybe it's a kind of a different theme. Maybe it's a neighborhood theme. I'm not exactly sure. But I'm really heartened to bring the theater community together. I think that we are so siloed, and I don't love that. And, looking at the Kenyatta Rogers, who directed Joe Turner for us, is now going to be in the piano lesson. Oh. And Mecca Rogers, who was in Joe Turner, is also going to be in the piano lesson. So that kind of cross-pollination is absolutely one of the joys of this celebration.
Definitely. I really love the sentiment of bringing the theater community together, and again, at all levels, the larger performance spaces as well as the smaller spaces, because, I firmly believe that a rising tide lifts all boats, and especially with the state of arts funding being cut and in peril in so many places, the more that we can share resources and share ideas and just share our love of theater, we'll get hopefully more folks to come out and support that as well, especially if it's their first time seeing something like that, making it inviting and exciting.
Absolutely. And one of the nice things about the celebration is it's just gotten so much attention. We've gotten coverage in the Washington Post. We got coverage in American Theater Magazine. The local papers are covering it. I don't believe the Baltimore Sun has covered it yet. So that's a wonderful thing, right? Because it's a big thing that people can really get excited and write about in a way that's different from this play opened and these people are in this play. It's got a much more of an overarching theme, and of course the idea of bringing folks and communities together is something that we all can get behind.
Absolutely. And so the celebration's about at its halfway mark, or close to. At the end of the season, it'll be about halfway.
At the end way, yeah.
Little plug for piano lesson, which opens soon at Everyman. And then this season, you can also see 7 Guitars at Spotlighters Theater in the Mount Vernon neighborhood. And then back to Chesapeake Shakespeare for the classic Fences. So where can folks find more information about the August Wilson Celebration?
Probably the easiest is we have a website, the Baltimore August Wilson Celebration. And that has the information about all of the shows and what order they are in and who's doing them, and links to tickets if that's available, which all three shows this season are available online, plus all of the articles about it. There are archives for the previous shows. And I should put in a little plug for the passport, which people are insane to have, which is that, you've got a little passport and you can get a stamp at each show to show that you've done the entire American Century cycle. People are going mad for those. This has been something that has been very startling, is how extraordinarily passionate people are about seeing these shows, and they want their tickets now.
No, that kind of excitement and fervor is great. So that website is bemoreaugustwilson.org. And as Lesley mentioned, you can get tickets for the 3 shows that'll be happening this season. And we hope to see you in the house.
Thanks so much to Lesley for joining the podcast, and thanks to Barbara for hosting. Remember, if you're a creative person with a story to share, reach out to me at srustin@promotioninarts.org to be featured on the podcast. And as always, when creatives thrive, we all rise.